Hey folks, this is Kelani. Patch 8.3 looks like it's going to be a very busy update. We have various new systems to play around with, we'll be sent back to some familiar locations to deal with some new problems, and everyone will be running around trying to manage their newfound powers and their overburdening corruption that's trying to kill them every step of the way. Seriously, dodging those fart clouds is going to be half of the entire patch, I swear. But one system that usually gets updated with every patch has been left to the wayside a little bit. Professions. We do have some updates for professions going into the next patch, which include another profession grind and some new crafted gear, and a few updates in 8.3 will also indirectly affect some professions, so we'll touch on those as well. Let's start by talking about what new goodies we'll be able to craft when this patch hits live servers. The most important and impactful update for professions is probably the new crafted gear. As per usual, the tailors, leatherworkers and blacksmiths will be given a whole new set of gear to craft to help catch up any alts or any of the players who decided one of the earlier Battle for Azeroth patches just wasn't for them. If you're coming back to the game for patch 8.3, this new crafted gear could give you a serious head start when it comes to gearing up your characters. The usual pieces will be available at item level 400 from the crafting professions this time around, so you can skip over a few stages of benthic gear entirely. The benthic gear from down in Nazjatar might still end up being worth it in the long run if you don't play an alt too much, but this new crafted gear will allow you to skip over a good chunk of the gearing up process already in place. All of the new gear, whether it's the cloth from tailoring, leather or mail from leatherworking, the plate from blacksmithing, or even the odds and ends from jewel crafting, inscription and everything else, it's now called Uncanny Combatants gear. So it's the new crafted PvP set, I guess, even though the vast majority of players probably don't use it for that reason. Now, as per usual, with a new season in Battle for Azeroth, I would assume every form of content will start rewarding better gear. The normal dungeons will be brought up, probably to 400 item level, and the mythic dungeons will drop some high item level loot when compared to previous seasons. So this gear will help you skip the normal and maybe some heroic dungeon portions of your gearing up path, but it's not going to get you all the way into the next raid. That's probably fine for a lot of alts out there, and getting up to speed the fastest way possible is usually the first thing on any returning player's mind. Because of that, the new crafted gear every patch is usually one of the best ways to make some very easy gold, especially right at the start. People will either be swapping class, coming back to the game after a break, or maybe just getting their alts up to speed so they can tinker around with some of the changes. Some easy item level 400 gear is going to be super tempting, and this gear usually stays fairly expensive for a few weeks after a new patch goes live. If you want to fill up your pockets to pay for raid repairs and consumables and all that good stuff for the next raid tier, stocking up on some of the items required to craft this new gear could be a good little investment. Now, if you've been paying attention to patch 8.3 at all, you'll know that we're not really going anywhere new. The new raid happens in Nyarlathotep, and that's about as close to an old god environment as we get. The majority of this patch will happen in zones that we've already visited before, namely Uldum and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. So that means we don't really get a new zone right now, so we won't see the kind of profession overhaul that we did with patch 8.2. That patch introduced Nazjatar, a whole new ecosystem with brand new raw materials for every profession to collect. Osmanite, Xenanthid, you know what I'm talking about. All of the new crafts and recipes in 8.2 relied very heavily on those new materials, but 8.3 won't have any new materials, so we're stuck using what we already have access to. What interests me about the new 8.3 crafts right now is that they're actually using the same materials as 8.2. It's a combination of 8.2 materials and the initial BfA materials. That means Nazjatar will remain relevant for farming and gathering because it's all going to be used in 8.3 as well. That could be the dev team being a bit lazy and just quickly throwing together some profession updates to make it seem like something new is happening, when it's really just dragging professions along to keep them semi-relevant. But for now, the 8.3 crafts use the exact same materials as the 8.2 crafts. The only difference is that the new crafted gear always requires more materials when compared to 8.2. This does make it super simple to stock up on the required materials though, because you can farm or buy them all right now, and they'll probably spike in price with the new patch. Less people will be passively farming Nazjatar because they just won't be spending as much time down there, and more people will be buying the materials to craft the new stuff in 8.3. A perfect storm for higher prices. So if you're interested in making some gold or just stocking up in preparation for the patch, make sure you buy your Osmanite and everything else you want before 8.3 goes live. So we have new PvP crafted gear, huzzah, but surely there's a few other updates to professions, right? Well, you wouldn't be wrong, but there's nothing all too exciting happening to professions in 8.3 from what we've seen so far. We will get more crafted gear at the higher item levels as well: engineering goggles, tailoring gear, leatherworking gear, blacksmithing gear, and a new alchemy trinket. The engineering goggles will match the raid item level for normal, heroic, and mythic. Then, as with all of the previous tiers, the tailoring, leatherworking, blacksmithing, and alchemy stuff, that's all going to be 5 item levels lower than the actual raid gear. Once again, all of these recipes and crafts are using the same materials as the 8.2 crafts, with nothing new really added in. What is new is the new void focus that you're going to have to craft to be able to make this new set of gear. In 8.2 and the Eternal Palace, we had the abyssal focus that you had to repair and upgrade through raid drops. That was kind of the preliminary grind to allow you to use the higher item level of the crafted gear. You had to go into the Eternal Palace, kill a few bosses, loot some of the profession items, and then use them to upgrade the focus for each new tier of gear you wanted to craft. Well, in 8.3 it looks like you'll have to do the exact same thing, except the void focus is something you actively craft instead of tracking through a quest objective. The very first version of the Void Focus requires 10 Void Focus splinters to craft, and the splinters apparently come from a variety of N'Zoth's followers. We don't know if that's going to be another raid drop or maybe something tied to the new assault feature as well, but it's probably a safe bet that the splinters will come from the new raid, or at least the splinter item will end up creating a quest, which you then have to go into the new raid to complete. Everything else has been copy-pasted for professions for 8.3, so why not copy over this little slice of the pie as well. So if you usually take advantage of the higher item level crafted gear from these professions, just be aware that you might have to run the raid a few times in 8.3 before you can start crafting it. Patch 8.2 provided us with a wide variety of new recipes, including new potions, new flasks, and new gems to go along with everything else. Patch 8.3 definitely seems to be a bit thin when it comes to profession updates because none of that extra stuff is there. No new raw materials, no new potions or flasks, no new gems. Really, it's just the higher item level of crafted gear at this point. We are still early in the PTR cycle for 8.3, so any of this could change before the patch goes live, but I wouldn't really expect it to. Like I said, we aren't really going to a new area or new zone or continent, so it doesn't make a great deal of sense to add in a whole nother round of raw materials, but it would have been nice to see more of a focus on the old gods, their madness and corruptive abilities when it comes to professions, potions that allow you to surrender to the old gods, new contracts with the old gods, maybe even something tied into the corrupted gear system that will be replacing Titan forging. Each profession could have been given some power over corrupting their own gear. Blacksmiths do the plate, tailors do the cloth and what have you. It doesn't even have to be just for yourself either. You could have made it so that you could corrupt other people's gear as well, providing you have the materials. That could have brought a lot of value back to those professions. I definitely think there's some lost potential here, but maybe the dev team just wants to get out of BfA as quickly as possible so they can focus on the next expansion, which I'm sure we'll hear all about at BlizzCon, and at this point it's probably going to be the Shadowlands. Or maybe they could surprise us, maybe we haven't seen all of the profession updates just yet. While we're talking about corrupted gear, something kind of interesting cropped up. In an effort to reduce the amount of RNG in the system as a whole, it looks like the dev team has restricted corrupted gear so that it can never roll sockets. Out of the hundreds of items I generated on the PTR to find one of each tier of effect to showcase them in a previous video, 0 items had sockets. It has also been mentioned that the plan is for corrupted gear to not be able to roll sockets, so I guess that is the plan going forward. But that means jewel crafters might find it hard to sell their already saturated supply of gems. I don't know about you guys, but the last time I went to buy some gems from the auction house, I spent less than 1,000 gold and got all the gems I would need for quite a while. That's pretty crazy to me. I always thought gems should be more of a luxury, but I guess random sockets means there's never really a steady demand for gems anymore. I hope we go back to more reliable sockets sometime in the future. There really is too much RNG in the itemization and gearing up process right now, but just something I thought was worth mentioning in a professions video. Gems might not be as sought after in patch 8.3 because some of the best items you can get your hands on are going to be corrupted items. The entire system is designed to increase the power level of gear, but it also prevents sockets at the same time. No sockets, no need for gems. Just something to keep in mind if you do dip your toes into the gem market. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on was the auction house changes. If you haven't been onto the PTR to play around with this yet, I highly recommend you do so. I can't believe it took them this long, but they may have actually fixed one of the largest problems with World of Warcraft these days. Back at the start of BfA, using the auction house was a major chore because of how many people were logged into our server. I know every high population realm had the exact same issue. The auction house just took forever to do anything. It obviously didn't help that a lot of players were posting auctions in single stacks for whatever reason. I mean, seriously, what's the point? No one likes to buy single stacks, no one likes sifting through single stacks. The only real reason to ever post single stacks is to create walls, but I guess all of the add-ons that have single stacks as their default posting option might have been one of the largest culprits for this behavior. But anyway, that's all gone now. I can't wait to see how the auction house does at the start of the next expansion. All of the changes are going to make it so much smoother. Whether you're wanting to buy items to craft stuff and turn a profit, or sell your day's worth of gathering materials, these changes are going to blow you away when you see them for the first time. The major alteration is to how commodities work. You can't post stacks of ore, or herbs, or meat, or fish anymore. You just post however many you want to post, and the auction house takes care of the rest. If you want to post 12, you post 12. If you want to post 573, you post 573. You don't have to worry about stacks or stack deposits or anything like that. If someone comes along and buys 200 of your item, they can buy 200 without even having to check how many of them are yours. If they want to buy 379, they can buy 379. If they want to buy 700, they can buy all of yours and the rest of their order from another player all at once without ever having to check anything or do anything extra. They just post in 700, the auction house does the rest, and it gets them 700. You're now able to buy portions of players' stock. It's incredibly efficient. You might not even need an auction house add-on after this goes live. It's going to change that much. For other types of items like gear, there are some very useful additions as well. Firstly, bids are disabled by default. You can turn them back on if you want to, but you have to go out of your way to do that. That turns most of the auction house into buyout only. I honestly don't know why the bid system is still there at all. Most of the time it was only used to manipulate how the search results were displayed, and now you shouldn't see as many listings which are bid only. In fact, you probably won't see any at all because it takes more effort to put a bid on something than it does to do a buyout. There's also some changes to how you can search for items. You can select upgrade only to show items which will only be a direct upgrade from what you're currently using. This goes for gear as well as other items like bags. I have 30 slot bags right now, so if I go looking for bags with only upgrades ticked, it should show only bags that are larger than 30 slots. There isn't anything on the auction house right now that matches that criteria, so I can rest well knowing that my bags are about as big as they can get right now, at least for the PTR auction house, which doesn't have anything on it. That's probably going to go off of item level for gear, so if you want to replace a few pieces to bump your item level up just high enough to get into the next looking for raid, or maybe you need an alt item level a bit higher to queue for heroic dungeons or something else, this should make that considerably easier. The other really cool search function is uncollected. If you tick that and search for gear, you'll be shown items that you haven't collected in transmog. If you want to fill out your wardrobe a little better, that's going to be a fantastic function to take advantage of. If you enjoy collecting battle pets or mounts, that option will also serve you incredibly well. Only showing pets that you haven't collected will save you sifting through every pet to find the one or two that you might be missing. But perhaps the most important addition to this entire overhaul is the ability to mark favorites. Right now on live servers, if you wanted to get yourself set up for a raid, for example, you need to find your particular food buff, then search for some potions, maybe some healing potions after that, just in case you don't trust your healers. Don't forget your flasks as well, maybe a handful of tomes, just in case you need to change talents. You might have to tank or heal, so get some of those flasks as well. Oh, and don't forget some spare enchants, just in case you get some gear and want to use it right away. A handful of gems wouldn't hurt either, you never know if you're going to get lucky. Oh, and would you look at that, you're late for raid. With the new auction house in 8.3, you can set each of these items as your favorites, and what that's going to do is add that item to a list that is immediately presented to you, complete with prices and available quantities as soon as you open the auction house. You don't even have to search for anything. All of your favorites are searched for you whenever you talk to an auctioneer. If that's not the single greatest time saver when it comes to auction housing, I don't know what is. So for anyone who loves professions, even if the professions themselves aren't changing all too much, the auction house changes should put a smile on your face when patch 8.3 finally rolls around. And that's it for this video. Do you think the dev team has something sinister planned for professions sometime before 8.3 goes live, or do you think professions are just getting ignored for yet another patch? What do you think of the auction house changes from what you've seen so far? Admit it, that favourites thing is going to be amazing. Will you still end up using an auction house add-on, or do you think you can finally get rid of auctioneer? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.